Hello, everybody. Um, it's really nice to see everybody and that everybody was able to show up today. I'm really excited to get this started. So welcome to Craft's inaugural conversation series, the Food Lovers Elective. At Craft, we seek to foster a transformative regional food system in Western Pennsylvania that recognizes the central role of food systems in our society and values of the people who live and work within them. We envision a food system that is equitable, fostering fairness and transparency across the value chain. A system that is sustainable, actualizing economic, social, and cultural well-being as part of the food system. And a food system that is inclusive, valuing dignity, sovereignty, and the inherent power of all people. So, with this in mind, this week's episode is called Foodiemation, the intersection of animation and food. Our host, Frankie Williams, is a former school teacher and food studies graduate student at Chatham University. Today, she is interviewing Sidney Clifton, the Senior Vice President of Animation and Mixed Media at the Jim Henson Company and founder of the Sidney Clifton House. This conversation will focus on the creation and skill it takes to animate food good enough to eat. This episode will take about an hour, with the last 10 to 15 minutes reserved for Q&A. Feel free to submit your questions using the Q&A feature on the bottom of your screen. Also, feel free to use the chat to leave comments or encouragement to our moderator and speaker, or to talk to each other. We really want this to be engaging for you guys, all right? So please have fun. We are very excited to have you guys with us, so please enjoy the episode. And Frankie, I will leave it off to you.
Thank you, Ani, and thank you, Ms. Clifton, for joining us today. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, and please call me Sidney.
Okay, I will call you Sidney.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to see you. And as Ani stated, you are the Senior Vice President of Animation and Mixed Media at the Jim Henson Company. And we just wanted to know what brought you to this role and how do you plan to influence it?
Well, I've been an animation producer for over 20 years, and for the last year and a half, I've been producing the animated version of Harriet the Spy for the Jim Henson Company and Apple TV. And as we progressed through the production, it became clear that the Jim Henson Company, because of its pedigree and prestige, was an interesting place to create for creators. I was excited to be working with them as the producer on Harriet, and was having just conversations with the executives there, executive leadership, and they asked me if I'd be interested in joining in a more significant manner. And the idea of being able to bring my experience and network and just sort of creative passions, I think, to this company that had such a pedigree was super exciting to me. So animation being my background, but mixed media also being an interest, based on puppetry that Jim Henson is absolutely known for, but also the intersection of animation, puppetry, and live action was just a great opportunity to do something interesting in the space. The way I plan to influence it is just to bring my network of storytellers, experience, really sort of pushing the global initiative on story into that space with the company that's committed to doing so. So just it felt like it feels like a great match.
That sounds wonderful. Yeah, I have very fond memories of the production that the Jim Henson Company has created. And I remember going to movies as a little kid with my family, watching some of the Muppet series. And it feels like something that is intergenerational in a way. You know, it has that nice feel to it.
Absolutely.
On top of this amazing career that you're speaking of, you are also the daughter of esteemed poet, writer, and educator Lucille Clifton. And I wanted to know if you could tell us how your mother's legacy has impacted your work.
Well, in every way, I guess, is the quick answer. But I think the fact that my mom was a poet and in her poetry a truth teller
Mhm.
really impacts the way that I approach story and storytellers. I think that that allows me, or sort of forms the foundation of my commitment to finding the resonance in story from in people maybe who may be from disparate places.
Mhm.
It's really important to me, and I'm passionate about maintaining the integrity of stories, of storytellers driving their own narratives, of storytellers not only driving their narratives, seeing the value in them, and supporting emerging storytellers in their craft, in their career, and even in their confidence that their voices and stories matter and
Yeah.
deserve to be heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes me think of, what was the movie actually? Um, I believe it was with August Wilson,
Mm,
and his stories, and how it deals with the everyday,
yes.
but that there's beauty within that. And
Yes.
so I admire that you take that you are able to see the importance of everyday stories and emerging writers and
Yeah.
storytellers. I think that that's really important. And my next question is, can you tell us more about maybe a food animation project that you've overseen, or that one that you admire?
Mm. It's interesting because food is treated differently in Western storytelling versus storytelling from other countries. But something that I have admired was probably the one that everyone admires, which is Ratatouille, that in the
Oh,
Western sense, only because it was about the love of food. And it was really interesting because I see sort of the intersection of not only animation and food, but the story of someone finding their passion
mhm,
regardless of where they came from. And so
mhm.
the food was treated very beautifully, it was designed beautifully, and it was designed to not only look beautiful, but to evoke the sort of five senses in the
Yes,
animation, which I think it did well.
it did.
So Ratatouille did that. I think that I think Princess and the Frog did it well.
Yes,
Um, with Tiana's gumbo and her
yes.
beignets, you know, and seeing her joy and commitment in her food, but also that being um, uh, a career to which she aspired, and it was deeply entrenched in her culture. So that was beautiful. Um, there's some interesting sort of anime treatments of Japanese foods. That is, it's usually beautiful and respectful. The way that food and food tradition and food ritual is treated in Eastern in Asian animation. So that's quite interesting to see that, because very often in Western, or like in sitcoms, or in Western animated properties, comedies, food is used as comedy, as a comic sort of element,
Mm,
rather than something that is a part that is deeply entrenched in the storytelling and is
yeah.
treated with dignity and respect. So it's interesting to see how it is treated, and why it is treated that way. It really depends on the storyteller and the story, the kind of story they're telling.
Yeah, it's my fiance and I have two younger brothers as well, and they're really big fans of the Dragon Ball series.
Uh-huh.
And there are often scenes where they're eating and they just have this huge spread of food. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what I would do right now to just be, I need a seat at that table, you know? And we watched Ratatouille at the beginning of this semester just to get ourselves back
uh,
in the food space again after break. And I love how the animators translated without showing. I mean, the food in there was absolutely beautiful, like you
mhm,
said, but
mhm.
I like the way that they communicated the feeling that comes with
Yes,
food, when
yes,
that they have that scene with trying the strawberry with the cheese, and
yes,
you know, the
yes.
little swirls and the jazz music in the background. That was really creative.
Yes.
um, so so really beautiful. What made you want to go into animation? Like what has drawn you to this particular medium?
Interesting. I started out wanting to be a writer, and I still write, but my goal was I was going to be a screenwriter and work in film and television, and um, I sort of got into animation sideways. And what I mean by that is I, uh, I took a job in development at Film Roman. I was, at the time, I was assistant to the senior vice president of operations at Fox Sportsnet.
Mhm.
Her friend had was going to Film Roman, was looking for a coordinator, and she knew that I was a writer and wanted to develop story. So that opportunity came. I was told, like, well, it's an animation studio. Is that okay with you? We may be doing other things too. So I thought, like, well, it's development, it's storytelling. That's
Yeah.
fine. Um, but when I got to Film Roman, I started working with animators and the artists and was developing things. I love the idea of creating a world out of your imagination. The
Mhm.
fact that there were no limits, you were limited
Yes.
only by what you could imagine, that was like the sky opened up. And it also reminded me of the first time I saw an animated film in the theater when I was a little girl. And
Oh.
it was Cinderella, so it was a little while ago. But and my babysitter took me to see Cinderella. And I remember when the curtain opened and that all the color was, I just gasped. I remember that feeling still. It was just like feeling of wonder, like, whoa, what is this? And being in the ability to create that um, was so just compelling to me. And then again, working with animators, I found just a group. It felt like I found my tribe because they were people who were, they could take what they imagined and put it on paper, and you didn't even know how it would end up looking. It could
Yeah.
look any way. You could
Yeah.
have even two people with the same idea, and they would execute it according to their perspective and their lives and their influences. And that I also used to paint when I was younger and still do some, once in a while now. So just that ability, the confluence of content and art, oh, that just it's inspired me from that time, and I haven't gone back. It's been amazing.
I love that. Yeah, I think that that's one of the things that makes animation so appealing, and also anime as a genre too.
Mhm.
I'm just thinking about how imaginative it is, and like you said, like the other worlds that you're able to create
Yeah.
and bring your audience with you. And
Yes.
I think that that's such a beautiful creative space to operate in, and
Hmm.
um, what qualities do you think an artist should focus on expressing in order to make food look appetizing? Because I know that we've talked about like how Dragon Ball Z food looks really
Hmm.
tasty, and then the same with Ratatouille. I'm thinking of the scene from Beauty and the Beast when
Yes.
like be our guest, and I'm like, I want to try that gray stuff too. Like I don't know what it is, but they said it's delicious. I want to try it. But what do you think animators need to focus on in order to make their viewers feel that hunger?
Well, I think it depends on the story. I think it's you
Mhm.
focus on the truth of the story you're telling. So, for example, in as you mentioned in Be Our Guest, the truth of that story was that this was about bounty and magic, but also comedy. And I
Mhm.
think that approaching the food from that perspective allows you to make it slightly, a little fantastical,
Yeah.
and you have to have humor in it as well, but also evoke that sense of luxury and largesse. Where on the
Mhm.
other hand, in SpongeBob, to make a Krabby Patty, you don't necessarily have to make it look delicious, but you have to make it look believable, and we have to believe that SpongeBob would think it was delicious. So I really think it depends on the story you're telling. So if you focus on the truth of that, I think that that should sort of drive your design sensibility.
Nice. Do we actually know what goes into the Krabby Patty? Because it It does look appetizing to me. I'm like, I would try it.
I'm not sure. I think someone knows, but I'm not quite sure.
Right. I wanted to know also, have you or the staff that you work with, have you ever had any kind of experiential learning experiences to get you in the mindset of the world that you're trying to bring your audience to?
Honestly, I think that all of us do research in different ways.
Mm.
I think certainly often it will be a matter of, going to find the actual food. But doing research about the food, doing research about where the food comes from, I think
Mhm.
is also interesting. Immersing yourself in the world where it's grown, how it's grown, who tends it, what the soil is like, what the music is like, what it smells like around. So I
Mhm.
think that the more of that kind of, again, 5 sense research that one can um, really dig into, the better, and the more accurately one can execute in whatever medium, whether it's 2D, 3D, stop motion, any of those kinds of media. Again, based on the story you're telling. So
Yeah, that
yes is a quick
actually,
answer.
oh,
So
that actually leads into my next question, was how you approach a new food animation project or an animation project in general. So that, thank you for sharing that. Um, I wanted to know, do you look to produce within a certain style or like for your brand, or does it change from project to project?
it absolutely changes from project to project. We
Yeah.
really have to allow the story to be what it is.
Mhm.
And we'll find the style based on the storytelling, based on the storyteller too. But it's driven by authenticity.
Mhm.
And sometimes the authenticity is very photoreal, but sometimes the authenticity is also extremely lyrical. It can be spiritual. It can be otherworldly. Really depends on what kind of story are we telling. Really, that drive the
Yes.
formatting.
Yes. So I think we kind of got into this a little bit, but could you tell me, why do you think it's important to create something like animated food that is artificial and try to use it to convey something real, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I get that, and I think when you're creating the content in animation, you are allowing your audience an opportunity to suspend their disbelief, to step outside of
Mhm.
their current circumstance and take this journey with you that may have
Yes.
nothing to do with their lives. And actually you're allowing someone a freedom that they may or may not have in their real life. So as
Mhm.
an audience, if I can take this ride with you, there may be elements of it that are very real life. And
Yeah.
it may allow you to feel something that within the confines of your present day construct, you might not even have allowed yourself to feel. You might not have had felt
Mhm.
this before. But if you can suspend your disbelief and take this journey, hopefully, if I am a successful storyteller and content creator, I bring you along, I invite you into this space that is safe and allows you the freedom to feel things that you may not have felt before or may have been afraid to feel before. I think it's really important.
Oh,
So,
I love that phrase, suspend your disbelief.
mm, mm.
That needs to be a hashtag, some like a t-shirt thing, put it on a mug. Like, I need it. I think we sometimes need those reminders
Yes,
uh,
yes, yeah,
to get out of our heads and out of our present
yes,
situation. So I
yes,
thank you for saying that.
certainly.
Is there a particular piece that's allowed you to go to that place, that one that you maybe haven't produced, or something that has allowed you to suspend your own disbelief?
You know, I think almost every animated feature does that at some point. Perhaps
Mhm.
perhaps the whole story doesn't, but I think the fact that I agree to enter the world that is presented to me just allows that, if I allow myself that freedom.
Yeah.
And usually it's sort of, if I decide I'm going to watch, then I decide I'm going to take the journey too. And
Yeah.
sometimes we go in and out when we're watching films. We may
Mhm.
be distracted. Sometimes there's other stuff going on. You might pause, but even for that moment, you feel that. For me, it feels like a visceral sense of being lit up from the inside,
Yes.
and that feeling, um, and that's a gift. So
Yes.
it's again, I don't know if there's any one specific. I mean, there are multiples.
Mhm.
I know that although this is live action and CG animation and visual effects, Black Panther did that for me.
Oh, yeah.
The feature Up did it for me.
Yes.
Especially those first 20. Lord have mercy, the first 2 minutes. Yep.
That piano playing, I cannot take it.
No.
It literally will like cause the tears to spring from their ducts.
Right?
Oh my gosh.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it took it. There's no dialogue,
Hmm.
but you take the journey, and it just gets you every time. So, yeah,
Yes.
yes, those are just two examples.
Oh man. I was thinking of Avatar: The Last Airbender,
Oh goodness.
and
Okay. Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
being able to relate uh
Mm,
to the four elements and everything, and
mm-hmm.
then I don't know, the kind of ethos that the
Yes.
show was putting forth through
Yes.
their storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
It made me want to be an
Mm.
airbender, and like made me believe, I'm like, maybe do I have this power? Like, I don't know,
Right.
it would be
Yeah.
amazing if I did, but no. Yeah. I was also wondering, do your food animations or animations that you've seen, do they share a common theme or a cause?
Not necessarily,
Mhm.
honestly, because again, they show up for different reasons in the different projects.
Right.
Um, and in the ones that I've mentioned before that really resonate with me, Ratatouille and Princess and the Frog, the food is almost like the medium for the characters. It, it's the medium for their freedom in a way.
Mhm.
It's a symbol of their passion and determination, and sort of their core sense of being, I think.
Yeah.
So those resonate with me, just differently, or more deeply, I think,
Yes.
um, than others. And in anime, again, you see the respect for food. Um, I just think that you, because we see it prepared less in anime, at least that I've seen.
Mhm.
Seeing the preparation really makes a difference for me for some reason.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I like how you mentioned, like that food was their vehicle or their way of communicating their identity or their
Mm-hmm.
self, because it's it's so intimate,
Yes.
to be able to, well, to eat first of all, but then to cook and to share it with others.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you really are sharing a part of yourself. And so I like that that connection was made. Um, so I was wondering, do you ever try, or does your staff try to engage the senses when you're animating, or even with when it comes to like designing a food item, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Would there be a circumstance where maybe a person like has that food up in front of them as they're doing it as a reference, like it's a 3D actual model, or is it typically something that you would find online or just from your imagination?
It really depends.
Yeah.
Very often people do want to see the actual food and, smell it and taste it and hold it and see its weight and how it, how the light hits it a certain way.
Yeah.
I mean, research is fine. Online research is fine, but it doesn't
Mhm.
really take the place of, the actual seeing the actual thing, tasting the actual thing,
Yeah.
you know,
I
even,
really
watching the preparation of a thing. So yes is the answer to that. Absolutely.
So I wanted to know next, how do you, what goes into revising an animation?
Mm. It depends. Generally speaking, in the animation pipeline, if you're going to design something, so if we're talking about designing, just each item that is designed is considered an asset. So if you were going to design an apple, for example, in 2D, someone draws it and they have to draw it in um, the different sides of it so it can be animated.
Mhm.
Revising usually just comes early where someone, usually a producer, or director will take a look at the design, decide that it needs some more of this, it needs less of this, the color needs to change, the shape needs to change, and then whoever is doing the drawing, the designing, goes back and revises it based on those notes. In
Mhm.
CG, it's 3D animation, um, like the Shrek sort of CG. It's different. It takes a while because
Mhm.
the asset, the apple, would then first be drawn, then it has to be designed in 3D, usually using like ZBrush or something, and so sculpted. So
Mhm.
at every element, at every stage, there are revisions possible. But the further down the pipeline you go, the fewer changes are possible. So probably revise at the design stage, then on the sculpting stage. Then if the asset's going to be animated, they have to create a rig for it. So usually by the time you get to the rig, you that's the last time revisions can be made on a CG object. So it's just on a regular cadence before animation starts. Once you get to animation, you pretty much, the designs are locked.
Okay. So with CG then um does that process, is it the same animator who's doing the drawing and then doing the sculpt, though it goes to
No,
different people?
yeah, not necessarily. It can, but not
Oh,
necessarily. Yeah. So
oh
it's
wow.
really, yeah, different teams.
It sounds really collaborative.
It is super collaborative, and that's why at the end of these of CG movies, you see like thousands of people have worked on this.
Yes. Credits
Long
just
credits.
rolling.
Yes, people are leaving the theater, and people are, going to get some coffee, and still credits rolling. Yeah, it takes a lot.
Um, my next question is, what do you notice first when you observe someone's animation of food?
Probably color.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the way color, shape. Does it look like what I remember? If it's supposed to be realistic, if it's not
Yeah.
supposed to be realistic, did it convey what the story required? So, for example, um, um, in the gumbo in Princess and the Frog, like when you saw shrimp in the thing, like that looked appropriate,
Yeah.
but because it was realistic, although slightly stylized.
Mhm.
Yet in Cloudy with a Chance, you know, that food was lyrical, was
Yeah.
very, very stylized, and also was funny.
Yes.
So I like it was interesting, and it felt like clever what they did with the shapes and what they did when they did the anthropomorphized versions of the fruit under the strawberry. He was super cute,
Yeah.
but still looked like a strawberry. So that was, does it tell the story, and is it accurate? And bottom line is, like, do I believe this? Right?
Yeah.
Do I believe it within the context of this story?
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think Princess and the Frog felt very believable to me. My family has A rich history with gumbo. We love gumbo, as seafood especially. We actually had a gumbo cook-off at our last Thanksgiving. It was a
Is that right?
competition. Yes.
And
And well, we had 3 people who entered. It was all men actually. It was 2 of my great uncles and my fiance. He didn't make gumbo. He made cocktail de camarón, like a Mexican shrimp cocktail.
Oh,
And
okay.
we gave out prizes at the end to see who had the best gumbo, like the gumbo cook-off. It was really nice. It was
That's
really
fun.
fun.
Yeah.
But the way that it felt believable in the sense that aside from the visual standpoint of how the gumbo looked, it like felt communal, and that was translated with the story, like you said, being that even if we don't have everything, like we have enough, like we can share with people in our community, and it was just really beautiful.
Yes. Absolutely.
So this is I think a little different of a question, but I am a big fan of stop motion animation. Do you have any projects with stop motion animation that you like, or anything like that? I was just wondering.
Let's see. Probably, I mean, starting with the classic, Rankin Bass Christmas specials, of course. So starting with those, but also I think Leica was doing amazing stop motion work, really detailed stop motion work. Let's see. And I see a lot of it in commercial work, actually. And there's some CG that is sort of created to resemble stop motion, only because it's faster to animate. But let's see. Yeah, and with Coraline, someone mentioned Coraline in the chat. That was that was an amazing property. Also Tim Burton's work in Nightmare Before Christmas and such. So he's doing really it's creepy but really appropriate and looks great. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. So those I didn't produce any of those, but I'm definitely a fan of the medium.
Yes. I really love the Wallace and Gromit series.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
It's really, I think they do a good job, like that whole partnership, and they're really adorable characters. I am going over to our chat now because we have some more questions from some of our participants. Quayla wants to know, hi Quayla! Hey. She wants to know, she said, your mother has written poems on her food moments, thinking about cutting greens specifically, and she's curious to know what food moment you often revisit within your own memoir.
Oh my goodness. Beans and rice was something that my family had on the regular when I was growing up, and I learned how to make it myself. And sadly, my daughter's allergic to beans and legumes, so we don't eat them now. But beans and rice, there's a comfort there.
Yes.
That just takes me home. Another one for me is peach cobbler. My dad taught me how to make peach cobbler, and when I remember, oh man, I hadn't thought about this in a long time, but I remember the first time I made one after he taught me, and I heard my dad bragging about my peach cobbler, and I was like, I have made it. I am now a chef.
Right.
Which is not,
I have arrived.
Yes, okay. You can't tell me a thing. And it's interesting because it's those moments that have something to do with family and comfort that just really just take me to those places, really.
Yeah.
It's all about what all about what does home mean?
Yes.
Yeah, it's
I love how that was kind of like a rite of passage for you too. Like it sounds like, you know, being able to get it just like how your dad made it. That's really nice.
yes. And greens too were a thing, in my
Oh,
family. So being able to, cutting them and tearing them and doing the snap beans on the back porch, and it they almost felt like, you know, black girl rites of passage.
yes.
Right? Yeah, which I love and adore.
Yes. So we're talking greens. Are we talking turnip greens, collard
It's
greens,
college,
mustard
it's
greens?
college,
Okay,
college in
okay.
our house, yeah.
And then with the beans or like red beans, I'm sorry, this is a selfish question for my own.
No,
So
it was pinto beans. Pinto beans, yeah.
very nice.
Yeah.
Another question that we have from the chat from Kala. Hi, Kala. She wants to know, what are your thoughts on the Pixar short Bow?
I'd love to say that I remember that exactly. I think that it was beautifully rendered.
Mhm.
I have to be honest, I don't remember the storytelling as well as I
Oh, I can
should
give you a
have.
refresher if you want.
Please do, because I was actually,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So there is a mom who has made the bao, like the dumpling,
Yes.
and the dumpling is trying to like walk around and escape, and she keeps like protecting it, and she doesn't want the dumpling to go.
Right. Oh my God. Okay, heartbreaking is
Yes.
the answer. Yes. Spoiler, I don't want to spoil it, but heartbreaking and
Yes.
beautiful.
And another thing done without any words.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I watched that with my niece and nephews over the course of the winter break, and we watched it before seeing Soul, actually.
Oh my. Okay.
And I think we were waiting on something, but they were just like, "Oh my gosh!"
Yes.
Oh. And then like, you guys are 4, 5, and 7, and it touched you too, you know.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
So Jasmine also has a question. Hi, Jasmine. She said, you said that food is used as a medium for their core sense of being. What food would you say represents your core sense of being? I know that we talked about collard greens and beans and rice, peach cobbler. Is it one of those, you think? Or
It's probably combinations of those, but I would also throw, all this is all Southern stuff that I learned to make a long time ago, but macaroni and cheese, another one of them. And anything that I'm sounding so Southern right now, anything having to do, if it has some hot sauce, all of those, and just that with side of hot sauce on the side.
yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely.
I think if I were to, also, I'm a Southerner, so we welcome any kind of Southern energy here in this place. So, but when you said, like being raised from this or coming from the South, that it made me think of grits and like how I would use that, like, oh, I'm a girl raised in the South, and that would, if I had to say what was my core being food, it's just heartwarming, filling, comfort in a bowl that you can do anything with.
Yeah.
Michael has a question. Hi, Michael. He wants to know, in your opinion, how does animation affect the believability of a true story? And the second part to that question is, does animation do a better job telling a story than live action?
I think, let's see, so how does it affect the believability? I think that its advantage and its challenge is that it does have you suspend your disbelief. So it allows you to go into a world that is real-ish, but is really sort of representing the, I guess, like the core concept of a world, with some often a fantastical edge. So it allows you, again, the freedom to think outside of your normal comfort zone.
Mhm.
So, which also then can allow you to then take in a truth that you might not take in prior. The
Mhm.
challenge for that is that you can leave that same story thinking like, well, that wasn't exactly real. And so
Oh,
that the difficulty there is, how do you tell the story? How do you sort of cement that in your audience? It's challenging.
yeah.
And the fact is, I think it's, for some people it's going to, it cements it, and for some people it just doesn't. And that's,
Mhm.
that's kind of what stories will do. That's why,
Mhm.
very often you tell the same story different ways, because maybe this one will be the one that sticks for someone else. So
Mhm.
things resonate with people when they're ready to have them resonate, or they don't, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope that
Um,
answered the question.
yes, I
Okay.
believe so.
Okay.
Quayla has another question. She says, I love that two Black women are in conversation about animation, an industry I didn't associate with Black women creatives until meeting you, Sydney. Um, what are three things you'd want Black women to know about starting a career in animation?
um, let's see. The first is that you have to absolutely be resilient. You have to have creative talent, and you have to be determined that any no is just closer to your yes.
Hmm.
Um, so those three things are sort of like fundamentally for yourself. I'm going to add a couple more. I think
Do it.
network with people, ask questions. Don't
Hmm.
be afraid to ask questions. Very often people say that it's about who you know in this industry, and that's part of it, but it's also
Hmm.
about who you are in this industry. And what I mean by that is, if you approach someone to ask for mentorship, ask for advice, I think just doing so with a really, coming from a sincere place, knowing that people don't owe you these things, but
Hmm.
may be committed to sharing and giving back, depending on the way you approach. I've had um, inquiries about, looking at portfolios and such, and sometimes just my schedule is ridiculous, so I can't look at it. I can look at the portfolio, but it might take me a week to get to it.
Hmm.
If after a week you haven't heard from the person, I think your next follow-up is just either a gentle reminder or being respectful of their time, but be
Hmm.
persistent, um, because most people really want to help. Just often at a certain level, people are just super busy. I mean, people have lives, and we're trying to deal with all kinds of different stuff. I
Yeah.
have had people, I had only a couple of times where the follow-up was like, well, I know you're busy, but like you could at least, and if you come at me that way,
Hmm.
that's not, yeah, see, that's, I did it,
Come correct.
I had the same face, and it was about, and it was more than anything about like, that's just rude. I mean, that's just
Yes.
not even, that's not good manners. It's also not a smart way to advance one's career. So
Right.
just, be persistent. Um, and I think, just having a sense of what you really love,
Hmm.
but also being open to other opportunities. Circling back to, I wanted to write. I was open to this opportunity at Film Roman, which is where I started in animation, and
Hmm.
discovered that I loved the medium.
Yeah.
So, you know, keep your North Star, but be open to multiple stars,
Right. Look at the whole
whatever lights you.
constellation.
Yes, yes, look at the constellation. Yes, that's, you need to hashtag that one.
Right.
Um, because you never know what you might discover about yourself, or you might
Hmm.
discover something else that lights you up, and that's amazing.
That is amazing. I love that. Um, our next question comes from Alice. Hi, Alice. She wants to know, she said, this might be repetitive, but what are some narratives you hope to see in the future, whether from you directly or supported by your work too?
Mhm. So narratives in terms of the kinds of storytelling and storytellers. Um, I'm I am very interested in supporting currently, primarily because of the Jim Henson Company and sort of what their brand and what they're known for, promoting African diasporic and Latinx, Native Nations, science fiction and fantasy storytelling. That's something that we're really passionate about and pursuing actively at Henson right now, and super interesting and important to us. And that's certainly, sci-fi and fantasy don't necessarily mean there must be dragons. It just means that it's speculative fiction from worldwide Black and Brown folk. LGBTQA. So what diversity really means in that space, we're really trying to be proactive about putting that content out and developing content and content creators. In terms of myself, I mean, with the Clifton House, the project I'm launching in Baltimore, it's about promoting young emerging storytellers, and emerging for me doesn't necessarily mean that they're all children and young people. Emerging storytellers just could be an 80-year-old who has written and has never been heard, just wanting to give people the opportunity to have their voices heard, whether in animation or in poetry or in prose, however that shows up for them.
Yes. My Gram actually took a storytelling class with our church a couple of years ago. And it was really beautiful. And then she shared it at our family reunion. It was called Get on the Bus. And it was talking about her involvement in the civil rights movement. And she went to Tuskegee for undergrad, and everyone's like, are you gonna go? Are you gonna march? Like, let's go, like, let's march. And she went back and kept saying, like, get on the bus, put on your shoes, like put your panties in your purse and let's go. Let's not worry about it. Like,
Wow.
So I think that's beautiful, that no matter what your identity is or where you are in your life, that you can be an emerging writer and you can still like make sure that your story gets out there.
Yes.
Alice also said, someone needs to animate N.K. Jemisin, please.
I will say there have been conversations. That's probably as much as I can say right now.
Okay.
Leave it there.
All right.
I'm sorry.
She says, OMG, yes. So that's a little tea in this conversation series. That's nice. I'm just kidding. So I was thinking that let me see if we have another question in the chat, actually. Okay. I was thinking that we could end on a little bit of a light note with giving you some rapid fire questions for this or that.
Ooh, okay.
They're all related to food.
Right.
There are wrong answers. No, I'm just kidding. There's no wrong answer. There's no wrong answer.
Okay.
Just want to see how you feel about different things. So this or that. First one is sweet or savory?
Savory.
Same. Cake or pie?
Pie.
Okay. Bagels or donuts?
Bagels.
Yes. Pizza or pasta?
Ooh, pizza.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know, that one's really hard. Rice or noodles?
Noodles.
I'm a noodlehead too. Fruits or veggies?
Veggies.
Breakfast or brunch? This was a big one. Breakfast or brunch or lunch or dinner?
Oh man. This isn't rapid, is it?
I know. No, it's okay. It's okay.
Dinner.
Dinner. Okay.
Mhm.
Sparkling or still?
Still.
Sandwiches or wraps?
Ooh, wraps.
Okay. Finally, I think I might, actually, I don't know if I know the answer to this one. I'm projecting, but biscuits or croissants?
Have to be biscuits.
Oh, wow. Ding, ding, ding. You got 1,000 points. I'm just kidding.
Because a couple times it's like, oh, that was the wrong answer. I can tell.
No,
No,
no.
okay.
That is all right. I love
Okay.
all of these things. So it is, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just go back and check and see if we had any more questions in the chat. Let's see. Oh, it looks like, okay, we have a question from Ani. She wants to know, can you tell us more about the Clifton House?
Oh, thank you. So, yes, I can. So the Clifton House is essentially an artist workshop and residency space that I'm launching in my childhood home in Baltimore, Maryland. The quick backstory is that this is the house where my mom's poetry career took off. We moved there from Buffalo to Baltimore in 1968. My mom's first book, Good Times, was published in 1969, and her career just took off from there. My parents actually lost the house to foreclosure in 1979, I believe. I think 79. And so the house stood, it was the last house really where my, both parents, my siblings and I really had like this really solid family unit. We didn't sort of split up after that. We certainly came back together and lived in other places, but it was a childhood trauma, I think, for my siblings and I, and for my parents. So my mom, who passed away in 2010, on February 13th, was her new book, her new ebook version of Good Woman was coming out. I reached out on February 13th, 2019. I reached out to the owner of the house because I sort of corresponded with her to ask her what the status was. And she told me that that was the anniversary of my mom's passing, that the house had gone on the market that day. So, yes, I get chills every time I tell that story, but it's the truth. And so I decided that I wanted to be considered a buyer to reclaim the house. I had zero reason to believe I could do it because financially, it's like, I live in California. This one mortgage is a trip. So
Right.
you know, this is going to be interesting. But I felt like it was a sign. So jumped through many hoops. I ended up buying the house and reclaiming it for the family. Was originally just going to use it sort of as this is the place I stay when I come back to Baltimore to visit family. And one morning I just woke up and knew what it had to be. Because this was a place that was a sanctuary for young artists, writers, and activists when we were growing up. Those are the people who my parents had coming in and out of the house, and
Wow.
where my sense of who I was as an artist really was born. And I wanted to give that back to the community. I wanted to that the house felt like it needed that vibe in there still, and so that's what we launched. We've had such support from the National Trust for Historic Places, the African American Cultural Heritage Action Fund. We received a grant from Eve Ensler, the playwright now known as V, from her V-Day Foundation. She was the first support we received. And then last year we received a $750,000 grant from the Andrew Mellon Foundation for programming. Thank you. We have work to do, and I am blessed and honored to be able to do it and continue the legacy of my parents.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That was beautiful. It sounds, I mean, it is serendipitous, and the way that you described it, it sounds like a beautiful way to reclaim and make space for people.
Yes.
Thank you for doing that. Oh, wow.
Thank you.
That made me a little emotional. Goodness. Wow.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm looking in our chat now, and I don't see that we have any more questions. Let's see. I think we covered everything in here.
Okay.
So, yes, thank you so much for
Thank you.
joining us today and for sharing your story.
Thank you. It was a pleasure, an honor. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, this was so amazing. I was
Thank
trying to
you,
like
Abby.
take notes and do quotes, but I was like, I really want to soak this in. So this was amazing. Thank you to
Thank
you
you.
both. Thank you guys so much for making this such an amazing episode. Um, it was so fulfilling and nurturing listening to you two talk. And I'm just so grateful that you guys were able to share that piece of yourselves with us and just to do it so authentically and genuinely. Like, I really appreciate you guys and everything that you did. For our listeners, please sure to follow Sydney on Instagram and on Facebook at Sidney Clifton and her nonprofit house at Clifton House, Baltimore. Okay, and again, thank you to Frankie for her beautiful work and all the thought that she put into this and all the care that she took. And thank you, Sydney, for just being you and bringing that to the table.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So Chatham community, if you want to see what it takes to be in Frankie's seat as a moderator for future episodes, please click the link posted in the chat to fill out the submission form. Okay. You can also email us at craft@chatham.edu for further information. If you have suggestions for future guests or topics, feel free to access that link as well. Okay. Please take a few minutes after our survey. It should automatically pop up once we're done with this, once I close it out. But please take a few minutes to fill out our survey and let us know what we can do to continue to improve the series and how we can, have this being an ongoing thing. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. And then last and certainly not least, please join us next week at 9 a.m., 6 a.m. Pacific time for Taste of Place, a conversation on food tourism with Rebecca McKenzie. Quayla Allen, she asked a few of the questions. She's a food studies major, and she's going to be interviewing Rebecca McKenzie, who's the CEO and president of the Culinary Tourism Alliance in Ontario, Canada. And we're going to be discussing how our organization is working to ensure food tourism is a meaningful and sustainable contributor to local economies and destinations worldwide. So again, thank you guys so much for your time. And I hope you guys have a good day. And everybody, I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sydney.
Thank you so much, Sydney.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.